Thank you very much, Joseph Osen, for that background report. We have in our studios here and also joining us via Zoom 4 guests, regulars on Good Morning Nigeria. First, let's welcome Engineer Fidet Ohiria, Managing Director of the Nigerian Railway Corporation. Engineer Ohiria, glad to have you this morning. Okay. Also here with us in the studios is Mani Ochuboju, lawyer and transport consultant. Mani, glad to have you this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers.
All right.
And we also have the pleasure of Dr. Kabiru Adamu, who's the Security Risk Management expert. He's right here with us in the studio. Dr. Kabiru Adamu, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Claire. Good morning.
And via Zoom, we have Roland Taguba. Mr. Taguba is the Managing Director, Bethlehem Rail, London, and Chairman, Technical Advisory Committee on the Nigerian Railway Bill and National Transport Commission Bill that's in the House of the Representatives. So we'd like to thank you for joining us all the way from the US. Good to see you, Mr. Ataguba.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm actually at the airport. I'm on my way out of town.
Oh, okay. That's great.
That's in Nigeria, by the way.
Okay, thank you, Ataguba. We hope that the connection will be stable and that you have a relatively noiseless environment to join into this conversation. But let's begin with the Managing Director of the Railway Corporation. You listened to our correspondent talk about the routes that are currently operational. But what is the situation as at this morning about the operational routes of the railway service in parts of the country or all around the country?
We say whether to say sorry or it's a painful thing that we entered the year in an ugly situation where the event that took place at the Tomikimi station, Ekeke Ngwebe, where 12 of the passengers and others were kidnapped, and we are also happy that after about 1 week or so, they got out from those who were holding them through the effort of the security families of the victims. And a few days later, we tried to face the problem headlong by not suspending the train, learning from the experience we had last year after the Abuja incidents. Suspending the train, and it took us a very long time to come back. Then after a few days, they caught the rail and the train ran into it. We are also fortunate there were no fatality, and the local government chairman of that area cooperated with us by quickly providing vehicle to move them out of that location. And after the Abuja incident, the train were fortified with both armed soldiers and police and civil defense. So to be confident to the people. Then just last Friday, we had this at Kubwa. I would say we are at war, Nigerians are at war with their infrastructure, but what we have noticed is that you have people stepping out to deliberately harass the rail industry. And we have told ourselves we will not give up. We try as much as possible to do what we can do to ensure the Nigerians who are using the train and this entire system is placed in a way that is safe, so we have a safe train operation. What we are doing in Nigeria about train is not what other people are doing, where the operator has to be a security expert, has to provide start buying arms or bulletproof or APC to protect the track and protect the train. I don't think it's done all over. It's not nowhere such a thing is done. But as I said, in Itakbe, somebody tampered with the track. And also, before now, we have also cautioned our drivers to be more careful. We have placed camera on the train so that you can see 2 to 3 kilometers ahead of time. And it was, the Abuja Kaduna was preventable in the sense that it was on a straight line, the cameras were working. If the operators were also careful, if the staffs did their work, because since this incident, we have given instruction, no trains should enter the station without piloting the driver. That means we have those we call pilot men, because we've discovered that they have vandalized the signaling, the lighting that will tell you the track is safe or not safe, and especially at Kubwa. And we left a standing instruction: no driver should cross the point till you have a person telling you that the track or the point is properly set. And from my preliminary investigation, the man to do that, to wave him on, was not there. And instead of the driver to also stop dead till that person's come to receive him, they just spoke on the radio we provided for them, and he thought all was well. So and we could see this because of this little technology we have added to our operations. Because the camera now have front eye to see in advance and at least 2 kilometer radius, so that if you see some unusual thing, and that monitor is supposed to be watched by what we call a co-driver and a stand driver, while the driver concentrates on driving, which means with what happened in Abuja Kaduna, the person to do that was not attentive, or I don't want to say part of the because
so that was basically human error.
Yeah,
human error, miscalculation
in doing their work.
In doing their work.
Yeah. So, however, we have restored Abuja Kaduna this morning, and Itakbe Wari to the track has been relayed by the railway men, but we have to look at Itakbe Wari, the coaches and the locomotive, to ensure that they are safe to go, and that will take us about maybe 3 to 4 days again. In Abuja Kaduna, because we had 3 wrecks, one was attacked by the last attack in March, and we are still working on them, and this one is also affected. So we have deployed the only one train set now to commence operation, and we hope to run 2 return trips, 4 trains a day, starting from 7 and ending by I think 6 or thereabouts. Okay. So that's the present situation on our modernized train station. On the other side, the old track, we are not leaving it. The Lagos Mass Transit is running. We are running freight up to, I think, Oshobo. That is from the Lafarge Cement Factory. The vandalization is not only limited to this standard gauge, it's also on the narrow gauge. So we cannot run between Mina and Kaduna because of that. This that take place between Abuja and Kaduna, it's the same thing that moves to Mina and Kaduna. We have a lot of banditry on that axis, so that our staff cannot even stay in those stations. They have to move out because even the villagers moved out. So that is the situation as at today, and we are putting more stringent measures, not just on the security, but the way we operate. So like yesterday, we have to run the rail bus between Abuja and Kaduna twice with the security men to ensure that no further tampering was done. They are not just attacking the rail, they are also attacking power. cable, we have our own power from Abuja to Kaduna. The Chinese, when they were doing it, engaged a security throughout that time. And we said, okay, we should also keep them on when we took over. And it seemed that we are yet to understand what is really happening. The uprising, they are removing them. You fix one today, the second day, they move to another place and remove them.
Has the NRC completely taken over the operation of the standard gauge rules from the Chinese?
For about 3 years. So we've been
so you are the ones, the NRC is one
operating.
Okay. You know, I'm just curious. You know, this might not be a question, but I'm just curious because the stories about derailment that I've heard in other countries, you know, come with a lot of, you know, casualties and all that. But both incidents we recorded here, we were very fortunate that we didn't have any of those casualties. Was it as a result of the expertise, or was there any form of technology? What really happened? Why were we so fortunate?
You see, as I said earlier, we have told our driver, put some speed. If that both trains that happen at a station, which means at a point, the people who are doing it know what they are doing. It's more dangerous or easy to have a train accident at what we call the point. That is the switch.
Okay.
Than have it on a straight line. They remove clips on a straight line and the train can still pass, not derailing, because it's on. I think they may have knowledge of how the train operates. The two incidents happened about entering the station where you have the switch, and so after Abuja Kaduna, they remove some portion of the track.
What are they doing with those things they remove?
I thought this was some, they steal and go and sell to the so-called foundry companies, but this once, I don't think it's for that. I think it was intentionally for us to have that derailment.
I remember, Claire, there was a time vandalism of rail lines was on, and we had the MD of Railways here as our guest to say, look, what was the attraction in vandalizing the rail tracks, the old ones and then the new ones? And he was talking then about the foundries, and then there were reports about some persons who had been arrested, prosecuted, and even jailed or fined somewhere around Jos. And some Chinese were said to have also been involved in that particular incident. But MD, we'll come back to you shortly. Let's quickly take advantage of the continuing presence of Roland Ataguba, who is with us via Zoom. Ataguba, sorry, you have a silhouette effect. There isn't much light on your face, but if your audio is good, we'll take advantage of it. Listening, I hope you heard what the MD of Nigerian Railway Corporation said. And it's an obvious frustration to say that there's probably nowhere else in the world where you play the role of providing rail services. You also play the role of a security agency. You play the role of all kinds of multiple agencies. Plus what continues to happen in terms of the lingering threats to our rail services. How do you contextualize all of this?
Yes, you struck my sympathy, and it's one of the realities of doing business in Nigeria. You ask any of the telecom operators, they will tell you they have to go into the deal business and various other things have to do to support the business. Essentially providing
Ataguba, we're having to return to the studios so that our engineers will give you the appropriate instructions on how to sort out the audio as well as the lighting on your face. We'll sort that one out presently. But let's come back to the studio before we get into the security element of it. It's the same question that popped to Ataguba. I would like to ask Mani Ochuboju. who is a lawyer and a transportation consultant. We've had you on Good Morning Nigeria on a number of occasions discussing trade services and the joy that was being expressed about the revitalization of our rail system. And listening to the catalogue of issues raised by the Managing Director of the Railway Corporation, what are your comments?
They are really depressing because we were expecting that after the initial cases of vandalization and outright terrorist attacks, there will be some improvement in the situation. Listening to the MD, we summarize it briefly into cases of trespass, theft, he mentioned theft, and terrorism. There's also aspects of human error, train defects, or management and signaling defects. All said and done, it is very, very disheartening that this is still happening. And it is a matter of national urgency because the railway system is one of the lifeblood of the national economy of the country. Anything happening to the railway system affects all of us. There's no exclusion. Directly or indirectly, we are all impoverished by these recurrent cases of derailment, incidents, accidents, detachment, or even collusion. The railway system has a right of way. It's a legal right of way. That right of way must be legally protected. And it means exclusion from intrusion, from outsiders coming to vandalize it, from outsiders coming to steal cables, coming to steal tracks, coming to get in the way that will cause disruptions and delay. It also requires us to also take a second look at the unique situation that the MD narrated, where he has to be the security chief, he has to provide new sorts of gadgets and ways of reorganizing their operations. Still on it, one of the things that gave me joy in what he said is that we now have sensors, camera sensors, and from the way he waved his hand, I think there are 3D sensors. Kabiru will tell us more about that. there are 3D sensors that can see about 2 kilometers ahead. I may wish to add to that. Let it be all the way on all the tracks all the time. We should have means of monitoring and detecting intrusion all the way, all the time. 2 kilometers is just braking distance. It's not good enough. No, but it is a thing to thank the MD for. It's a thing that we add as in Nigeria. Our standards are so low, so we celebrate the little one. You hear us use that phrase, "Oh God, they try, them try." Yeah, we are not voting them to try, but thank them anyway for the try. This one, you guys have tried. I don't like using that phrase, but it's a start. But I'm adding to it with due respect. Let us enhance the monitoring system, the detection system along the track all the time. The cameras, great. The monitoring shouldn't just be between the drivers and the co-driver. There should be a detachment of security experts. Again, I'm veering into Kabiru's area.
Center, you observe the whole
any detection, any intrusion, any derailment, any movement.
Well, this is like you're in a war zone.
Oh, sadly, that is what it is. These are cases of outright terrorism. I mean, let's not miss words about it. And I'm delighted that Kabiru is here. These are cases of war. He even mentioned the word war, though in a muted and user-friendly way. But that's what it is.
It says that Nigerians appear to be at war with the infrastructure.
Yes. So we have to also try to find out who those persons are besides the terrorists that we are familiar with, the usual ones. But then, this is where your committee on security should also bring outsiders to think outside the box. Suppose there are other economic interests attacking this? Other than the bandits that we know, the unknown gunmen that we know, the terrorists that we know, or the Boko Haram that we know, other than that, how about devious economic interests attacking this? Because just as blackouts, power failures give money and enrich some economic interests in Nigeria to make sure the power utilities don't work, that too is a case of primitive capitalism of some people who don't want the train perhaps to work. We have to look at that negative, primitive capitalist instinct of some sections of Nigeria. And we have to take it seriously because it affects all of us.
Yes, because, prior to now, the road used to be, the major, means of transportation,
Exactly.
across, especially to the Kaduna axis.
Yeah.
With the coming of the Abuja-Kaduna train now,
Yeah.
almost a lot of, what would I say, traffic, is now diverted to that train corridor.
Yeah.
So, given explaining why people may want to derail, the process, people may want to sabotage the process.
Yeah.
But again, when that axis came up, almost everybody, the communities along the axis, celebrated it.
Yeah.
And we have records, we have video clips of traditional leaders, the people themselves coming out to talk about the economic benefit of, the different stations, the different stop stations and all that. So I'm wondering what could have changed, because those who are doing these things are within. They didn't come from far. They are within the communities, within areas of where the accident happened. So what could have changed in their psyche?
It is difficult to say straight away. It will require critical analysis. But one of the things perhaps may call for corporate social responsibility to be enhanced, so that these communities where these rail lines pass will see the rail line as part of the community. It enriches them as well, directly or indirectly, so that when they hear that the MD, Nigerian Railway Corporation, is around, they maybe provide some water, they provide some maybe clinical services or something, just general corporate social responsibility in these various communities along the train routes. That may help to make them feel a part of the industry, perhaps. That may help. What has changed could be simply increasing incidents and cases of insecurity in Nigeria. It could even be politicization of security in Nigeria. It could even be
poverty.
It could be poverty.
Governance.
It could be poverty. It could be governance. It could be cases of theft, which he pointed out, which again links to incidents of poverty. When there's poverty, of course, criminality and theft increases almost proportionally. So those are issues. I wish maybe we know the ready answer, but right here, off the cuff, I think maybe some corporate social responsibility will help.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Kabir Adamu, just speak. Just speak.
Okay, let me
Just
put it into
speak, yes.
context.
I mean, that's
in framing the cooperation between Nigeria and China in this regards, with regards to rail infrastructure, could this aspect have been woven into that framework?
Definitely. So in operational security, and I'm using my word carefully because this has to do with operations, all the big lenders, let's start from the World Bank to the African Development Bank, name them, they have a section where they insist that the borrower, in this instance, Nigeria, incorporates operational security as part. And the reason is obvious. This is a loan that we collected, and we have to pay that loan. Now, if the borrower is conscious that there are threats, and that's why I'm going to talk about what I will refer to as this threat spectrum in Nigeria. The borrower is interested. How do we manage that threat spectrum? Because from that threat spectrum, risk to the project itself will create consequences that may arise to give rise to a situation where the borrower in this sense is unable to deliver on the project. So I'm not sure if we did that. If we didn't do that, then I'm hoping that this is something that especially the Ministry of Finance and Budget and Planning and perhaps Finance should look at clearly and carefully whenever we collect such loans for whatever purposes, that we have a section for managing risk. Because this is what the world does nowadays. Like I said, even the borrower in this instance insists that you provide that component within our project. Now, talking about the threat spectrum, this is what the two other discussants have mentioned. The threat spectrum, in simple terms, can be divided into two: the external one and the internal one, and both discussants have actually mentioned the components of this. So the external one, as an example, would include the terrorist groups that are active, bandits, criminal gangs, communities, for instance, that are aggrieved for one reason or the other. I know there was a time when children were pelting the train when it was moving around, and then there were times when cattle would be left on the rail track, whether intentionally for the train to stop, or perhaps it was just an error by those who were moving with the cattle. So those are all elements of the external threat spectrum. But for the internal threat spectrum, that would be internal to the Railway Corporation. As an example, does the Railway Corporation vet its staff before they employ them? Even if they vet them, as an example, for those in critical sections of the in the department, as an example, do they do periodic vetting? Why am I saying this? All of this external...
What do you mean by periodic? What is vetting? What context of vetting?
To identify who they are, to identify red flags, quote and unquote, that could incentivize them to carry out all of these things that were mentioned.
Know your employees.
Okay. Simple. So do they do that? Because everything that we've mentioned externally can affect the organization internally.
Yeah.
So if we don't do that, I mean, poverty as an example, an employee of the Railway Corporation, if he's aggrieved for one reason or the other, and somebody offers him 100,000, teach me the technology so that I know what part of the rail infrastructure I can vandalize that would create the kind of effect. All these are examples, and I don't want to trigger...
Because he gave us the hint to think along this line, because it's like they have knowledge of how this thing works.
So that we don't trigger a conspiracy theory, quote and unquote, I agree totally that one of the best things to do is to run an investigation, and I'm happy that the MD has actually hinted at that preliminary findings from his investigation, which tells me that an investigation is ongoing. So that's that with regards to the threat spectrum. The third component is actually how those threats are threats on their own. But what is important, especially from my field, is how do we mitigate the consequences of this threat, and that is where risk assessment or analysis comes in. How will those threats result into risk exposure for the Railway Corporation, from its operation to its personnel, as an example, to several other components of risk. Now, once you do that, you now mitigate those risks. Now, I can't sit here and say, as an example, this is the solution. But what we know is that there are 4 components to every security management plan or procedure. What are those components? The ability, first and foremost, to detect this threat and the risk. And he hinted at some of that. When you install a camera, what are you trying to do? You are trying to detect. And he gave us an instance that, the distance with which that camera can go. And a recommendation has also come to go longer than that. But where we don't have money, technology is good, but frankly, we have to be realistic. We do not have money. So one of the easiest things to do is to use human intelligence, quote and unquote. And that brings us to the discussion around the community. How do we incorporate the communities into the security arrangement, especially the intelligence? As an example, the local chiefs, I know effort has been done around that line. All of these persons who do this are not ghosts. How do we ensure that the communities within wherever the rail track passes, whenever they have information, they can pass it on to the security agencies, whether directly to the NRC, or, because if I'm right, the railway line is a national critical infrastructure, which means it has to be protected. So that's number one, detect. The second one is the ability to deny. So you've detected the threat factor, whatever it is. Let's say it's gunmen who are coming to attack any component within the rail infrastructure. How do you deny them? As an example, you could deny them because you have, he mentioned they have military and police deployment. Or it could just be physical barriers that you put, fences as an example, or name them. It could be even dogs. I know instances where by deploying dogs, they are able to deny. Dogs can play two roles too. They could also do that first one, detect. Because when they bark, you will be interested in finding out what happened. The third component is to delay. So that's where, as an example, and I know they have this, they've got armed security personnel, both with on the train and then of course at their facilities and all that. So
I think we should just put Kabir on hold.
Let me mention the last element. There are 4. I've mentioned 3. The last one is response. Because if the threat element is determined, and let's say you have 10 police personnel on the train, and then he comes with 100 personnel, of course they will be able to subdue that 10. But you should have the capacity or capability to communicate so that there is reinforcement. And that reinforcement in modern security should be between 2 to 8 minutes. And I'm aware that they're working along that line. But the challenge is this, and he's noted it, they depend on other components of the government to supply the security that we're discussing. As an example, I know the police has a deployment that is responsible for security within NRC. I also know the DSS has a component, at least in Abuja here. I don't know at the national level how that arrangement is. So how do we bring all of this together? I've talked about the threat spectrum. I've also talked about risk assessment. How do we bring all of that together? And I think that is what I would suggest to not just the NRC, but the Ministry of Transport. We can't approach security in the manner that we're approaching it. It has to be holistic. And
Dr. Kabir, let's just pause the Kingsley. I know you.
Well, I mean, Kabir, that's why when I asked him the question, I said, Dr. Kabir, just speak. So, and he has been speaking. So we'll pause to Dr. Kabir. Thanks a lot for your contribution. Now we can return to Roland Ataguba, who is at the airport, and hopefully his audio will be much better this time. Dr. Ataguba, well, I want to go back to the original question I asked you to contextualize what the MD Railways had started off with. But I'm sure you have also listened to the other 2 guests in the studios. What is it that we are dealing with here, and how can we begin to get on top of it? Well, unfortunately, there is a freeze there on the transmission, the Zoom connection to Ataguba. I want to restate something that I said on Good Morning Nigeria years ago. Good Morning Nigeria has been on NTA network service since 2014, and money has triggered this for me to say it before, of course, I move into other aspects, Claire. And this, he was talking about devious economic interests. That could we speculate and say, for instance, there are devious economic interests that are probably sponsoring all of this to instigate whatever is happening and create a loss in public confidence, also disrupt the operations of the Nigerian railway services. What I said at the time was to recall an interview granted by Dr. Brigadier General Samuel Ogbemudia, who was military governor of the old Midwest. In the 1980s, General Ibrahim Babangida was military head of state. General Babangida appointed Ogbemudia as sole administrator of the Nigerian Railway Corporation. And the railways, of course, started to pick up. And in the interview that was published some years later, Dr. Ogbemudia did say that he received a visitation by some transporters who came to see him, and started by congratulating him on the good work he was doing with the railways. But they, according to him, they also drew his attention to the fact that they were also in the logistics business, and that they had taken financial facilities for their various operations. And I asked him if the railway continues to do well and users of their logistics services now abandon them and came to the railways, how would they then raise money? How then would they then break even? How then would they repay the facilities that they had taken? Bamudia, who of course is now late, may so rest in peace. He was a guest on Good Morning Nigeria, not on this issue. We took him from our Benin Network Center some years ago, and he said he was dumbfounded. And thereafter, we all know what happened to our railways until recent years, where the government said, no, this is the way to go. So that is the economic sabotage I'm talking about. I had said this some years ago on Good Morning Nigeria, and I'm saying it again today on the basis of the point that Mani Ochuboju has raised. Now, I want to pause the MD of Railways and take on one of the many points that he raised. He says, look, Nigerians are at war with their infrastructure. Pipelines vandalized, rail track vandalized, manhole covers here in the Federal Capital Territory, actually in the city, manhole covers are removed and so on and so forth. Are we at the mercy of these vandals? Is it there something that can be done? You can't be bigger than the government, you can't be bigger than the law. Are we giving them a free rein? Let's begin with Mani and then we'll get back to Dr. Kabir.
Yeah, we have a situation of an avalanche of Luddites who have besieged the country, the length and breadth of the country. They are destroying things without any remorse as to the consequences. They destroy road infrastructure, they destroy pipeline infrastructure, they destroy rail line infrastructure, they destroy electricity infrastructure. So the utility networks, water infrastructure, so the utilities are grievously exposed to these dangers. The reasons for it, Claire hinted, it could be poverty, deepening economic crisis could be part of it. So when we begin to deal with issues of employment, issues of security, direct physical security, it may enhance the situation. When we begin to give people hope that they don't have to go and steal electric cables.
Are we the poorest nation in the world? Definitely not. Are we the poorest nation on earth?
Yes, but we have the greatest number of poor people in the world.
Well, they say 133 million people extra poverty. But I'm just wondering, if that is the analogy, people are poor in the rural areas. Are they burning down their huts and then tearing down their farms? And elsewhere in other countries where people are poor, are they also just destroying their public infrastructure?
Well, we are not the poorest nation, but we have a high concentration of poor people. And when poverty becomes aggravated, it dehumanizes the victims of poverty. And in that process, they become lumpen proletariat. By being lumpen, they destroy things that even will favor themselves. Precisely. So that reversal of the psyche is something that happens with, in fact, the poverty of the psychology of the person itself. So that is an aspect we need to deal with. We should not just dismiss increasing and deepening poverty per se. So when you become a lumpen proletariat, they tell you go and burn down that building.
You don't ask why.
You don't ask why. For peanuts, you go and burn it down. Go and destroy that rail track. You go and do it. You don't give a damn. So it becomes even self-destructive too. So those are issues we need to look at. And the other issues that are related, to that.
These are also people that could be used for certain other reasons. They could also have been used for political issues.
Political violence, all sorts that can be used, and that therefore leads us to issues of sensitization. And that's partly why programs like this are necessary. So that there will be increasing sensitization of the people themselves. That these rail tracks you are destroying, it affects you too. Let them understand how it affects them. These pipelines that you're destroying, it affects you too, it affects your community. This, what do you call it, a bridge that you're destroying that passes by your community, these culverts that you're destroying, it affects you. These electric cables that you're destroying, it affects you. Our rail tracks are not even highly electrified. They're already removing the cables. So imagine a situation where we have increasing network connectivity with more cables. What's going to happen to those cables? So besides removing signal equipment that they are removing already, they are also removing cables. Cables that are also important to railway operations. So issues of sensitization needs to go with maybe corporate social responsibility, in improving the economic situation of the country. And I think, as I've heard Kabiru say in many of his security analysis, issues of security sometimes starts with even economic and food security. If we deal with that, it may improve those aspects of having Luddites and barbarians turning our systems upside down.
Well said, Mr. Mani, and I don't know, Kingsley.
Well, I would like Kabir to also weigh in on this aspect of Nigerians being at war with their infrastructure. Yes, it's been said that poverty could be a factor that is driving all of this, but the rest of us are not necessarily poor. The rest of us are not necessarily insane. So how do you balance that up? Because, as you said, yes, somebody who has poverty of psychology could be misled into committing arson or vandalizing infrastructure and so on and so forth. But the rest of us who are sane, the rest of us who are not poor, the rest of us who recognize the value of these things, what is our responsibility? Are we also failing?
Exactly. There are so many aspects of this conversation. But let's go back to NSAS and the attack on warehouses that followed that riot. That, for me, would have been an eye-opener for anyone who has responsibility for security management in Nigeria. It showed clearly the level of public, I don't know, for lack of a better word, grievance, and the potential for the public to be incentivized towards certain actions that would be unfavorable even to themselves. We're in a pre-election month, as it were. Actually, this is the month that the elections, or tomorrow will be the month that the elections would be held. Why am I saying this? The last election, 34% of persons who were eligible to vote voted in that elections. Now, what it says is that the person who is governing us at the moment enjoyed a percentage, well, the highest percentage out of that 34. Now, if we're going to change this, then I'm hoping that on February 25th, that perhaps the number would be anything above 50%, so that that person who emerges from that election has the trust and the followership of the citizens, as it were. Why is that important? Because they will now see a reflection of their wishes when that person acts. This is very, very important. Sometimes we don't discuss this enough. But talking strictly security now, the answer, I would say, is simple. Follow the money. All of these persons, assuming, for instance, they're doing it for certain benefits, especially if it's financial, what if and how about if we block where they can sell these items? Then the incentive for them to actually carry out these activities is reduced significantly. Today, Kingsley, if you take me to a rail line and say, oh yeah, vandalize it, why do I start?
Exactly. A good point to keep you on hold. We'll just take a short break. When we come back, I know the NTA has quite a number of issues to respond to, and we'll also look at the other sides of security, how we can provide adequate security for our rail infrastructure. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and about time for us to take a short break. Welcome back. Again, it's Good Morning Nigeria, and we're looking at the threats to rail infrastructure. And I just would like to say that I don't know if anyone, Kingsley, if you saw the story on the Newsline, on Sunday, it was all about those who remove manhole and how cars were plunging into those manhole, the kind of accident. So whatever you destroy, whatever you vandalize, it comes back to us, comes back to you. You understand? So, but
Claire,
yes.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interject. Kabir made a point, which is valid, to say if you do not disrupt the market for these products that are being vandalized, then we'll continue to be. I've always asked myself the question. There are all kinds of iron mongers around. Couldn't we also have security personnel as detectives being embedded amongst them to say, look, find out what the market, how the market operates, how they get their supplies, and so on and so forth. And once you destabilize that, they will know that it's all over. And some, let's say even in the city, some of the underpasses that you see, place CCTV cameras or spy cams.
Okay. Yes, fair enough. I'm sure we'll respond to that. But there's a local parlance, we are all familiar with. It says the domestic rat. It is the domestic rat, that shows the wild rat the route to the house. So again, going back to vetting, your staff, those who drive the trains, vandalizing rail infrastructure it's not as easy as vandalizing any other infrastructure. It's just like vandalizing oil pipeline. You must have the knowledge. If you don't have the knowledge, you must have somebody who has the knowledge that will show you the road. So MD, it goes back to the quality, the people that you employ. Who are they? Do you really know them?
We are a government establishment, and when we employ, there is Federal Character Index you must adhere to. Apart from that, you train them. You see, everybody is hiding under this banditry. We allocate our track to a section that you have a group to cover 6 kilometers. Every 6 kilometers, you have a set of a supervisor, what we call a gang head, and 6 linemen, the people that work on track. But since this advent of banditry, a fear of going even onto the track has scared them off, because most of the tracks are not within the town, and when something happens outside, ordinarily the people within that section would have been dealt with. But knowing that, for instance, there is serious banditry in a section and the staff has complained, you don't force them to risk their life. Even right now.
So what do you do?
Like we could now go with security men with a rail car or a rail bus. Like yesterday, once we were able to lay the track, we sent a rail bus to Kaduna 2 times between morning and evening to ensure that nothing has happened after the incident on Friday. So left in the morning, came back, went again with security men. And it's not that we just employ police and say go free of charge. It's not like that. And those sections that you see delicate, you can't ask your staff to go there. So during that time, a lot of things happened. And you see, when you go on the track, in most cases they're isolated. And these people go there. Even when they try to bring them out, you catch them. I've repeated this here severally. And we have a big major issue now, like in the Benue, Nasarawa axis, that every day, even the civilian and the staff arrest vandals.
Are you reading out? Are you reading out help from the inside of the NRC?
No, that's we've dealt with a lot of people. But if you follow my analysis,
yes.
Ordinarily, if a pin is meeting in your section, we hold you responsible. But there are some sections that at least somebody says, I can't go there because of this. We are all human beings, you leave them. Even when the staff nurse come out, form a vigilante and arrest, they can't do anything. They hand over to either civil defense or the police. 2 days later, 3 days later, the vehicle is released. I asked them, say, they brought one magistrate. I said, no. What? You are a lawyer. What do you call it now? What? The exhibit. You have allowed the truck to go. Yeah. You've not. If I used to talk to my commissioner, if I'm a security person, when they come to, I will wait to see where they are taking it to. Not until you catch where they take it to, the business will not stop. And even when the one they caught in, they fined 200,000 to the company. It's from his pocket. They just paid the 200,000 and left. So not that you are not. They catch them every day, and the average railway person cannot do anything apart from handing them over
to security.
And even when the police they tried and go to court, I don't know what happened. Sometimes they find 20,000. But our law is felony to even cross the track. To cross the track, the treated as not just trespass, a great crime. To not only in Nigeria,
serious crime.
Say serious crime to come to the platform when you don't have ticket. You can go to up to 20 years, but nobody is implementing it. And he arrested the trailer today. He said, okay, police, 2-3 days you come back. The trailer is gone. So I don't have gun. And I'm a person, I don't go with siren. I just tell myself, because I believe I'm not going to hold this post for life. And I don't have that resources to start having security. I don't want to get used to it. I have to use my senses too to ensure that. So the only thing we can do is to put them in writing and document them. So sometimes I bleed from my heart when I see all these things. You see, the ministry and us have tried to do something by providing at least those cameras. You see, those same cameras are in our operation center where we have engaged 3 people, 2 people sitting in front, 1 person sitting behind to ensure that don't say I went to toilet. They are in position to see the stone. I wanted to be discreet before. What happened in Abuja is that in between the switch, somebody placed a stone. It's electronically controlled. We added another level of safety. I said that when in this control dispatch room, you have operated that button and it shows that it has slapped. Somebody must go, because we know what we experience, especially at that end, the northern end of Cuba. Even after we wanted to start, the minister rode the train. It took us 30 minutes because the train has passed. In order to go back, somebody has gone to remove something. And because of that, we said before any train gets to that section, a staff has to be there. So after setting the point, that's what we call it, somebody must physically go and see. Because the electronic, because they vandalized it, cannot report. It's supposed to be a feedback system that will tell you it's closed or not closed. I said, but you have to go there, hold your flag. And if that, when we interviewed the boy, said he was there, the driver said he was not at the point, he was close to the point. But from our recording, he was not even near there.
Okay,
So those are the
MD.
things. So it has to be, we have to have those people. And how do you have them? How do you, 4 trains a day, and you do that 4 times a day, you close for the day. Not one person, not at least 3
Sorry,
people.
MD, we're very pressed for time. I know that these are issues that we can dwell on, but I still want to stay with you because amongst the issues that have been raised will concern the efficiency of the train services and the fact that we have a loan to pay back.
Yeah.
And the fact that also, if you like, these are new beginnings for our rail system. You said earlier, on account of insecurity, Mina Kaduna is not running. And there are other issues along other services. And whenever your operations are disrupted, you don't run. At a point in time, we will also be saying that, oh, fuel can actually be transported by rail and other hazardous material so that all these issues of tankers and so on and so forth could be minimized. How do these threats impact, I know you've spoken to it, impact your overall, or let's say strategic outlook in revitalizing the railway system in Nigeria?
It's a serious drawback. Apart from, you see, for you to stop a train and to come back, there are a lot of things you have to do to come back at a cost. Now, because of insecurity, you have to improve on your out of the ordinary security you have to have for rail line. You have to have police not just on the train at some strategic location where you suspect you could have these bandits. For them, you have what you call the so-called dry ration because they are out of their distance. You talk about community engagement. We've also encouraged the community security, and you have to also pay them. In Abuja, Kaduna alone, people guiding the cable every month will pay 6-point-something million. We have the community, like the hunters, every month we pay them. And those extra police mobile, counter-terrorism, we also pay them, which make train operation very expensive. And don't forget the rise in diesel. We are using diesel. So it's no longer, when I joined the rail service, what we have is man of war, St. John ambulance on the train. Just in case if there are things, not now that the people, you mentioned about poverty affecting people. I don't think people who are poor can buy those guns. I don't know the type of gun. Those who came to Igwebe, I was 2 of our staff, and what they told me, he doesn't know gun, but they know those guns are brand new when he saw them, 10 of them.
Okay, we must see.
So if they are poor, how do they acquire those guns?
The Gweben case was quite different from the issue of vandalism. Yes, so
you see, even those, you see, it's not cheap to be a vandal because how much do you pay trailer to carry your loads? Because you have to pay more than another person that is carrying legal consignment. And sometimes they may be fake police wearing uniform, also leading them inside the vehicle, guiding. The most time police soldiers, I've said it here, they fight or argue among themselves.
Okay, so
so I don't think it's poverty, it's greed.
It's greed. Okay. Well, greed beget poverty begets greed. Dr. Kabiru, let's quickly do. I remember, I think in the 80s, in the early 80s, the incident, the Murphy's incident, train collision. Of course, over 100 people died in that incident, and the story was that it was due to miscommunication. One left much later than scheduled. Now, we were lucky that the incident in Cuba, there was no casualty. It was as a result of miscommunication. How does the NRC begin to look at it from a wider perspective, communication issues, so that we avoid a collision, in the case of Memphis?
As far as I'm concerned, and MD will correct me, we don't have that challenge here because we've never encountered, that type of incident.
Yeah.
So ours is very different. When I mentioned the word threat spectrum, I was very conscious. And what I would recommend, if you allow me, and I hope I can give you an invoice at the end.
But it could happen. That's what I'm saying.
So my recommendation is
communication is not addressed. The issue of
a collision.
Okay.
If you don't mind, you see, right now we have smart radio. It now depends on the person who deploy it or use them.
And
the driver, the stations, we don't depend on either signal or no signal. If I have come with my own, I will hear what is happening. That comes also at a cost, which you pay annual subscription. So the driver have that. That's why the driver just spoke to the man. Is the point set? He had that confidence to come because no, and he said yes. And instead of him waiting physically for the man to receive him, so we are past that stage now. Technology that except they deliberately want to collude because the driver can talk to the driver.
Okay.
So
and the driver can talk to the station.
My recommendation to the MD is to have a risk management department. I know you have a security department, you also have deployment from the police, but beyond that, modern day security speaks about risk management. So have a department that looks at this threat spectrum and would make for each threat, you can have a risk register and then you now manage those risks. Now what that would do for you is that because threat is not static, it's transient. It changes and dynamic. We can look ahead, and there are resources that frankly are free. I'm a fellow actually of the Risk Management Society of Nigeria. There's also ASIS International. We're happy to do this for you almost freely. So feel free, engage with these two associations that I've mentioned to support you in designing an infrastructure for risk management for the railway service.
Mommy, you still want to say something? 5 seconds.
The former minister budgeted 3.7 for security sensors, devices, and monitoring on the railway line. It was not approved. But we have lost more than 5 billion since 28th of March to now on disruptions. 5 billion. It is about time we revisit those issues that were swept aside under the last minister.
All right.
On sensors, monitoring, and security surveillance systems.
Manuel Chuboju, lawyer and transport consultant, thank you very much for your perspectives. Also, Dr. Kabiru Damo, security risk management expert. Also a pleasure to have you on our program.
Pleasure.
And earlier on we were joined by Roland Taguba, although for a very short period because of bad network we couldn't have him longer. But we do appreciate his contributions. And let me also appreciate the MD of Nigeria Railway Corporation, NRC, Fidet Ohiria. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you.
Right, and that's it for our conversation. For Super Eagles Forward, Murphy is set to be unveiled by League One side OGC Nice in a deal worth €30 million. That's for sports.
Lorient have accepted Nice's offer for Super Eagles forward Terry Murphy. Nice paid €25 million plus €5 million in add-ons for the striker. Murphy, according to reports, is already having his medical ahead of the move. The 23-year-old will sign a 4.5-year contract upon the completion of his medical. It is the biggest outgoing transfer in the history of Lorient. Murphy joined the Le Melu from Belgium Pro League outfit KV Kortrijk for €8 million in October 2020. Murphy scored 12 goals in 20 league appearances for Lorient this season.
That's Good Morning Nigeria for today. As always, we appreciate your tuning in. Tomorrow is another day, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak. Remember, the campaign against rape and rapists is still on. Join us. From me and the rest of the production crew, have a good day.